The other day, I was going through the process of archiving a bunch of old photos and videos I had taken over the years. Being a professional content creator, as well as someone who loves memories in general, I love taking photos and videos of various moments in my life, and I had a bunch of stuff that was unorganized sitting on a million different hard drives. So the other afternoon, I made it a project to sift through all of these various different pieces of media and catalog them by year and activity and all that. And in going through this process, I made a really exciting discovery. On an old external hard drive that I had completely forgotten about, I opened up one of the folders to find a subfolder that was labeled Old VODs. In this folder were maybe a dozen or so live stream VODs from the era of my career when I was a professional streamer on Twitch TV. I was really excited about this because I thought all of this had been completely lost to time. I have been a professional full-time influencer for more than a decade of my life, and most of that history has been cataloged here on my YouTube channel. I very rarely private or delete videos, so you can go back and watch all of the cringe-inducing content I've made even back in the era when I was just a teenager. But ever since Twitch made the decision to automatically delete creators' VODs unless a creator went back and specifically saved VODs as additional videos, a huge portion of my career has just been completely lost to the ether. I never thought I'd be able to go back and rewatch any of those old VODs until I found this folder, where upon opening it, I was greeted with a completely different era of my life where I looked so much younger. I instantly pulled up an old video, hit play, excited to relive the glory days. And what I found was not what I expected.
Why is this viewer constantly AFKing? Just forfeit if you're gonna non-stop AFK, please. How can you guys not kill him 1v4? No, just auto-work! Oh my god, she has nothing left, dude. Like, what do you do? You're not gonna be able to be in the fight, Varus, if you're just f***ing dicking around behind the thing.
Looking back on these VODs, I was a really angry, bitter, terrible streamer.
No, you had to have thrown. There's no way you didn't throw that. You had a 22-7-16 Akali, and you also had a Jarvan who was like 10, 3, and 20 at some point.
Across most of these videos, I was doing nothing but getting angry at League of Legends and raging at whatever was going on in-game. Anytime a chatter tried to say something to me, I would always respond to it with this really bitter tone. It was like watching a completely different person. Today, I like to think of myself as a very happy, fun, silly guy. I mean, I'm a pretty positive person. I'm not a angry, bitter nerd anymore. And after watching a couple of these VODs and seeing how most of them were the same, I had two interesting thoughts. The first was, wow, this was not a very fun stream to watch. No wonder my streaming career never really took off. But the second was that I started to wonder how much of this came from the fact that this was an era where I was doing nothing but playing League of Legends. Back then, I was grinding League of Legends 10 hours a day, nonstop, every single day of my life. And when you spend so much time immersed in the world of League, it changes you. I think that's the biggest reason why this streamer version of myself was a different person than I like to think I am now, or even a different person than I was before I started playing League. All of the time that you spend in League of Legends immersed in its community will naturally change the way that you talk and think and interact with other people. And after much more thought, I eventually came up with what I believe are the 5 ways that League of Legends breaks you. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. League of Legends makes you incredibly antagonistic. The single biggest thing that I took away when I was watching all these old VODs of myself were how I was incredibly uncharitable to anyone and everyone I spoke to. Anytime something happened in-game, I would get incredibly angry about it. Anytime a teammate tried to say anything to me, I would respond with anger and vitriol toward them. Even if a chatter said something on my live stream, the responses I gave were always with this tone of bitterness or anger, even if it was from something like a donation. Anytime anyone tried to say anything to me, I would always assume it was an insult. That's how I viewed every interaction. Anytime someone tried to talk to me, I assumed they were insulting me. This is something that naturally happens if you play League of Legends a lot, because normally when people talk to you in League, they don't say nice things. If somebody says something as simple as, Aurelia, stop pushing your lane, that might be the jungler or the mid laner telling you, hey, I'm gonna come gank your lane if you stop pushing it to tower. But more often than not, that is an insult. Any kind of advice given to you in-game is always with the assumption of a teammate saying, hey, I know how to play your role better than you do, and since you apparently don't understand what your responsibilities are, let me take care of that for you while I also take care of my own role. Anytime there's any communication in League of Legends at all, it normally comes with a negative underlying tone, and so the more you play League of Legends, the more you learn that when someone is trying to give you advice, it's normally with some kind of passive-aggressive, insulting tone. And I'm ashamed to say that as I started playing League of Legends again recently, I have allowed this to creep into my normal, everyday life, even with interactions with real human beings. Like as I've mentioned before, recently I became a father, and as a first-time parent, I am very intimidated and nervous about raising my kid right, doing everything that they need done, and not messing up in some sort of way that will scar them for life. The other day, there was some family over at their house, and I was feeding the baby a bottle or doing something where the baby was getting fussy, and I was worried that I wasn't doing something right. And a family member told me, hey, it looks like you're struggling. You should do this instead. And I immediately got defensive. I got so angry. I yelled at them. I said, why are you questioning my parenting? I don't know where that rage came from. But then I think I realized later that the previous week was when I first started playing League of Legends again, and I was getting back in that mindset of just assuming that anytime someone tries to help you, it's kind of with an insult, like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing. Let me do your job for you because apparently you're so incompetent. I forgot, that's not how normal human beings act. Normally, when someone tries to give you advice, they're trying to be helpful. That's not with any sort of negative underlying tone. This is kind of one of the nastier elements to League of Legends, but on the bright side, this is the easiest mindset to change or very quickly fix. If you go outside and step into the real world, touch some grass, and interact with human beings, you will very quickly learn that real human beings do not interact with each other the way that League of Legends players do. And as long as you spend a little bit of time with others, you can very quickly fix this mindset because it is a nasty one you pick up. The second thing I noticed that League did to me was a bit more detrimental though, especially when it comes to my career, and it kind of extends from this habit that people have when it comes to communication. Because in League of Legends everyone takes everything as an insult, and because you sometimes do need to communicate things to your teammates, you often have to repeat yourself over and over. If you're trying to say someone is missing from your lane and allies need to be careful of a gank, you can't just give one little ping or one message in chat. You should be spamming MIA in chat or spamming the missing ping. Just constantly say the same message to your teammates over and over. Just one message isn't going to come through. People won't notice that, or they'll assume it's an insult and you're not being serious. You got to really hammer the point home if you're going to have any hope of people listening to you. And so the more I played League of Legends over the years, the more I learned that anytime I communicate something to others, I really need to repeat it if I want them to understand the point. And I think that this really hurt my ability to write, especially when it comes to my career making YouTube videos. Like I remember when I first started making YouTube videos, I would often make videos that gave general advice to League players on how to get better at the game with some underlying logic beneath it that I would try to explain. Like a very popular idea in early seasons of League was the idea of elo hell. Was it possible for you to be at a low enough rating that because League is a team game, you wouldn't be able to win more games than you lose and climb out? You would have such bad teammates that they would constantly cause you to lose every match no matter how well you played. I made a couple of videos addressing this topic where I pointed out, hey, as long as you aren't the person on your team who is causing your team to lose, even if there are random AFKs or intentional feeders, they will show up on the enemy team more often than they show up on your team, as long as you aren't the person who is actually responsible for the loss. And so while an intentional feeder might cause you to lose an individual match, as long as you play a large enough sample size, if you truly don't deserve to be at your rating, you will win more games than you lose and climb out of elo hell. Very sound logic and an interesting video, I thought, until I started getting a million comments that would say, Yeah, that's all well and good, but you haven't seen how bad my teammates are in my rating. Oh yeah, this is G-Bay just talking from Platinum. He doesn't know how bad it is down in Bronze, down in Silver. People have no clue how bad these guys are. I would read these comments and I would get so angry because I would just be pulling my hair out. I addressed your point in the video. Did you not watch the video? But the conclusion I would come to was they must have just not understood it. I need to repeat the point. I need to say it in clearer terms or do something to make sure that they understand next time, because that's what you got to do with the League community. You got to repeat stuff over and over. Ever since then, even till today, I have a really terrible habit whenever I make a YouTube video of repeating the point, of belaboring, of constantly stating the same thing over and over again to make sure the audience understands it. I'm literally doing that right now. Being able to speak briefly and concisely is a talent in the world of writing, and a talent that I am still trying to chase. And I don't know, I'm blaming this one on League of Legends. Another weird way that League of Legends kind of breaks you down is this game has a terrible habit of stifling creativity. Recently, I made a video that talked about how one of the positive elements League has that I don't think is mentioned often enough is how League is a game that allows for self-expression, maybe more so than any other multiplayer title I've seen. Because League is so complex with so many different roles and opportunities for character selection and variables that you can choose in how you go about playing a character, the mere act of playing the game and choosing a champion pool and variety of strategies, it almost becomes a creative act. That's a really cool thing League has that I don't think any other genre does. Like if you look at other RTS games, like StarCraft for example, you can trend toward being more of a macro-focused player or a micro player, but whichever one you prefer, everybody needs to understand basic macro. Everybody needs to understand every phase of the game. You can't just become a great StarCraft player by doing nothing but rushing with early bunkers and marines. Only League and other MOBA games allow you to specialize very deeply in specific strategies that are still viable, that become a creative expression. Anyway, I made this video and released it, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out. But one comment that I saw pop up pretty frequently, as well as a comment that I heard secondhand, apparently some streamers who watched it also made, people were saying, "What are you talking about, G-Bay? Of course RTS games allow for skill expression. They allow for so much more skill expression than League." When I said League allows for a unique level of self-expression, people heard I was saying League allows for a unique level of skill expression. To a League of Legends player, skill expression and self-expression are the same thing. That's the only thing you do when you play this game. You just express how skillful you are. It kind of shocked me when I was reading all these comments and upset me a little bit, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had gone down this rabbit hole before. The more you play League of Legends, the more you get in this really competitive mindset where you are doing nothing but trying to win, and you oftentimes completely forget about any sort of idea being possibly creative. Why would I play a champion for the fun of it, or for the variety of doing something new? I should just be playing whatever is meta, whatever is going to get me the most rating as quickly as possible. Even when people talk about playing off-meta champions, they talk about that being a good idea because then maybe your opponents won't be prepared for the strategy that you're pulling out, and that can still get you more rating. The League community is so good at min-maxing and drilling down to what optimal strategies are that it's become a completely foreign concept, the idea of, oh, maybe I'm a bit of a different player, maybe I should try playing this strategy instead because that'll fit my personality more and allow me to find a bit more success. I actually have an interesting take here too. I kind of think this is why League YouTube became the way that it did. In early seasons of the YouTube scene of League of Legends, people made all sorts of different creative videos. You had some people who were making straight gameplay content, of course, and some people who were making guides, but you also had people who were making very silly little sketches with the characters in game, or little music videos. You had people who were making all kinds of montages, or people that would try specific builds and strategies just because they were fun things to pull off in game and could be layered on a funny track of music that could make for a cool little edit. But as the League community became so good at min-maxing metas, eventually people started to apply that to YouTube. You would think, okay, what's the best content I can make that will get the most viewers for the least amount of effort? Okay, gameplay commentaries, let's make 1 million of those. What thumbnail is gonna do the best? What's the best click-through rate and retention time? Okay, this thumbnail, we're just gonna make this thumbnail over and over and over. There definitely is value in learning the skill of being able to recognize a meta and figuring out how to maximize your possibility for success. But it's odd how all this time in League can kill your ability to think laterally. Why would anyone ever want to do that if you're not going to rise in rating? There are a couple of ways League can change your thought process, though, that are a little bit positive, in my opinion. Like recently, I was working with a game development team as a sort of creator consultant, and I was having a discussion with the whole team about an idea that was floating around. The higher-ups at this team wanted to reach out to content creators, YouTubers and streamers, and get them involved in the creative process of this development. And one of the people specifically said, we just have such a cool idea here that the instant creators see this, they're going to want to come on board. I mean, why would they not want to join this opportunity? At which point I kind of stepped in and said, well, you have to think that, you know, I'm a creator, and every day I'm getting 10 emails or more on some developer who wants to pitch me some idea, or some sponsor that wants to contact me for promotion in a video. As a creator, when you're sent all these emails over and over, it is very easy to just start ignoring them. Just assume they're all probably AI generated anyway, and no one's even gonna notice if you don't respond. Creators need something unique that they're gonna see, that's actually gonna catch their attention, because in many ways, to be a YouTuber, you have to be a little bit of a narcissist. It takes a certain level of self-confidence or self-delusion to think, I am such a genius who has such wonderful things to say that I'm gonna just record myself speaking to a camera and hundreds of thousands of people are gonna listen because that's how great I am. You have to be that confident to not only start a YouTube channel, but even more so because when comments then come in saying, actually, you're an idiot, this is no value whatsoever, you should quit making videos and just leave the earth, you have to have the confidence to say, yeah, I know better than you what you should watch for entertainment, and muted. I am not naturally that narcissistic of a person. I certainly wasn't when I was a little kid. I was much more shy and introverted and not super self-confident whatsoever. It was only when I first started playing League of Legends, and playing League, you naturally have to be a bit narcissistic going through the experience of this game as well, because the same process comes up. You're playing the game, people are yelling at you for why you don't deserve to be alive. You're doing this wrong, you're building that wrong, you shouldn't even be bothering with this champion. You need to have the self-confidence to say, yeah, you guys don't know what you're talking about, I'm better than all of you, and muted. I think the only reason I am a YouTuber is because League trained me to be a very self-confident person, to the point of delusion. I am my favorite person. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. My wife and child are my two favorite people in the world, but beyond that, I am my favorite person. I am a genius. I create artistic masterpieces here on my channel. It might sound a little bit silly if you're someone familiar with League. You'll be like, yeah, of course you have to ignore your teammates when they flame you. What are you talking about? But the more I step into the real world, the more I realize people don't naturally think that way. Actual human beings are very concerned about what their boss thinks of them at work, or whether they're gonna get this promotion, or whether they'll succeed if they change career fields, how this relationship's going. League is the one thing in my life that gave me self-confidence to a degree that might even be unhealthy. But boy, it has also been a maybe more of a positive change in terms of how it broke my mind. Lastly, if there has been one single way that League has changed me and the way that I think over the years, it has been the way that I criticize myself, which is something that you guys have actually said is a little bit annoying. Oftentimes when I talk about my career on YouTube, or when I talk about, you know, what kind of video I should be making next, I often focus on the negatives. I focus on how I'm not a very good editor, or how I'm not a very good writer who always repeats himself. I talk about how I don't have fancy cinematography, or I don't have a high budget for my YouTube videos. I often just sit around in nature and talk to a camera with very loosely scripted ideas. I minimize the successes that I have and more often than not bring up failures as an opportunity to learn, because I kind of think that's more relatable. It's more relatable to hear someone talk about the difficulties that they faced and how they've overcome adversity rather than talk about how everything went nice for them all the time. But you guys have said before how it can actually be a little annoying how hard I am on myself. I'm constantly bringing up flaws and things I should improve, where you, a viewer, you're sitting around thinking, I don't know, I like your videos, you don't gotta be so hard on yourself. But that is the last thing that League of Legends taught me, changing how I think. It taught me how to sit down and look at what I just did, find the faults in what went wrong, and sniff out opportunities to improve. To make mistakes is to have opportunity for improvement, and I have become incredibly good at looking at what I've done and finding all the little faults that I can get better at next time. That's certainly not a skill that you learn through school or through normal avenues in life. I mean, it can be a little bit depressing how much League players have to go and constantly look at how bad you are at this element of the game or that element, or how you missed this CS and that CS. To play League of Legends, even if you're the best player in the world, you're losing 40% of your solo queue games. You are constantly being met with failure and needing to look back on what you did wrong, what you can do better. It definitely can feel almost depressing to always ignore the good stuff and just focus on the bad, but that is how you get better at things. League taught me that's how I got better at League of Legends, how I climbed from being below bronze rated in season 1 all the way up to diamond. And I feel like, if anything, the League has given me a lot of opportunity in life, because that's how you get good at anything. Playing League for 10 years of my life has been an interesting experience, and I won't say that every way that it's changed my brain chemistry has been for the better, but I can't help but feel, for all the positives and negatives, I don't know if I would have found the successes I did in life without it. Okay, I think that works. I think that's a pretty good video. Talk about being a narcissistic fool. I am so good at making videos.